Well, I think there are levels of consciousness. There's what I call ordinary human consciousness or ordinary human awareness. And there's something that in the East is called Siddhi consciousness or Christ consciousness in the West. Ordinary human consciousness is a consciousness in which I identify who I am on the basis of what I'm doing, what I accomplish, how much I collect, who I'm better than, and so on. A key word there is separation. That is, there's you and there's me, and where you stop and where I start is what divides us, what separates us. Then there's another kind of consciousness, which is one in which says, like the Native Americans used to say, no tree has branches so foolish as to fight among themselves. There's an awareness that there's a oneness. We are all connected. That on a round planet, there's no choosing up sides. That all of us are connected in some way that's perhaps invisible, that we can't see with our eyes or our senses, but we can feel with our hearts. And when your truth, I don't mean your truth about what you write down, but I mean your truth about what you live, is something that goes beyond your own personality and your own physicalness. You reach this level of Siddhi consciousness. And it is here where in the New Testament it says through St. John, quoting Jesus, that even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things.
But how can a person truly practice consciousness of spirit, if that's what you mean?
Yeah, consciousness of spirit is to treat everyone out there as if they are connected to you rather than as if they're separate from you. Your separation from each other, you begin to eliminate. Your separation from the planet, that you're not on this planet to push it around. That are connected to everything that, if God is that which is everywhere at once, not a person but a presence that is in all things, that means there's no place that God is not. And if there's no place that God is not, then God is in you and also in all that you would like to attract into your life. And so consciousness is really realigning your inner attention with this awareness that you are connected to everything. There was a story of a guru who was just a little child in India, and everyone knew that he was an incarnation of God. I mean, he was living at this, what they call an avatar level. And the people said to him, they were trying to trick him, and one of the people in the tribe said, I'll give you an orange if you can tell me where God is. And he said, I'll give you 2 oranges if you can tell me where God is not. There is no place that God is not. Once you know that, you are connected to God. We were talking off camera before about this great teacher in India in Puttaparthi named Sai Baba, who has this gift of manifestation, materialization, just to move his hands. And it's called the gift of fish and loaves in the New Testament, where you think about feeding people and food just appeared. And he had in 1986, he had his 60th birthday. And 1,100,000 people came from all over the planet to see this holy man who had this good gift of higher awareness and higher consciousness. And one of the reporters from one of the magazines thought that they would trap him. And they asked him the question in front of all these people who he had granted an audience to, are you God? And Sai Baba looked at him and said, yes, I am. And so are you. He said, the difference between you and I is that I know it and you don't.
Do you know it about yourself?
Absolutely.
When did you first realize this?
I don't know exactly when it was, but it was at a very low time in my life.
Did it humble you or did it elevate you?
It humbled me and then elevated me. You have to have that fall in order to raise yourself to a high level.
Run the risk, do you think in your mind, of arrogance with anybody watching such an outlandish statement, or do you know in your heart that those who have open ears and open eyes will see that you're coming from what you call your center of truth?
Well, I think one of my teachers was Abraham Maslow. I was blessed to know him in lifetime. And he said in order to reach these higher levels of awareness, you have to be independent of the good opinion of other people. Mm-hmm. And if that's perceived as arrogance or ignorance, it's okay. I mean, I've been out in public, I've grown up in public over the last 25 or 30 years. I've been on all the different media shows and written about it and had reported on. And I found I just can't do it on the basis of what other people think. In this last book that I wrote, The Wisdom of the Ages, I profiled 60 people who were great teachers, from Buddha and Jesus and Lao Tzu to Omar Khayyam and Keats and Shelley and Yeats and Martin Luther King and Mother Teresa, 60 of the greatest leaders, philosophers of all time. And one of the things about all of them is that they didn't do what they did on the basis of what other people out there might think. They were living, they were detached from outcome. That's what Maslow, these people were detached from outcome. That is, they weren't doing what they were doing because it was going to bring them a reward or because people were going to buy books or because they were going to make a lot of money. They're saying, doing what they did because they felt it in their heart.
You begin by ending your search for love. I say it again. You begin by ending your search for love. No more searching. So what does the poet mean by those that go searching for love only make manifest their own lovelessness? Well, when you seek something, you feel that what you're striving for is missing from your life. If it's love, for example, then what you're really saying is, I'm experiencing lovelessness, and in my seeking, I hope to fill this void. But the problem with this approach is that rather than filling the love void, it only puts you further out of balance, and lovelessness continues to be your experience. Why? Because you're weighted more in lovelessness than in lovingness. Your thoughts are focused on finding what's missing, while your desire is for love to flow into your life. This kind of misalignment continues to attract more of what's missing. What you're thinking about is the love that's not there. The universe cooperates by matching up vibrationally with precisely what you're thinking about. How does the universe know to do this? Well, it's merely matching its vibration to your thoughts through the law of attraction. You need to turn off the searchlights and dismiss the search party, and instead replace them with an energy of loving thoughts, an internal knowing about receiving love. You originated from a place of spirit. That's defined by love. When you begin rebalancing your life so that your desire and the way you think and behave are a loving partnership, you'll realize that your desire is really God realization. The longing for love is a longing to become more like God in your thoughts. With this awareness, you soon realize that searching outside of yourself for what you already are is the ultimate folly. No one else can give this to you. As D.H. Lawrence says, the loveless never find love. This is because the loveless are focused on not having what they desire rather than on what they already are. Furthermore, the loveless believe that they're unworthy of the love they desire, and guess what? They continue to attract more evidence of their unworthiness. With the searchlights turned off and the one-person search party given a permanent rest, you can turn your attention to balancing the authentic means at your disposal for receiving abundant love. This, then, is the irony, summed up perfectly in the poet's conclusion that only the loving find love, and they never have to seek for it. Becoming the love. My definition of love goes beyond the admittedly delicious lust and excitement that you experience when you first become infatuated. Ultimately, these inflamed passions fade away, and what remains is authentic love, or the balance you're seeking. And what is a prime example of this? It is to love as God does, to extend the caring that defines your very creation outward whenever and wherever possible. Love of this nature leads you to forget about your own ego and want what you desire for yourself even more for another. This is how the act of creation seems to work. Your Creator doesn't ask anything from you in exchange for giving you life. It's given freely and abundantly, and no one is excluded. You don't have to repay God for giving you this life, or the air you need in order to live, or the water you drink for your very existence, or the sun that sustains you. Without any of these freely given ingredients, you wouldn't continue to live. This is the love that God offers you. To balance your life with more lovingness, you need to match your thoughts and behaviors with those of your source, being love in the way that God is. This means noticing when you're inclined to judge yourself or others as though you or they are unworthy of love. This means suspending your need to be right in favor of being kind toward yourself and others, and deliberately extending kindness everywhere. This means giving love to yourself and others rather than demanding love. This means your loving gesture of kindness is heartfelt because you feel love flowing from within, not because you want something in return. A tall order? Not really, unless you believe that it's going to be difficult. Lovingness is a feature of your natural state, and your ego isn't part of that state. Ego dominates because you've separated yourself from your God self, the loving self that came here from a place of perfectly divine, unconditional love. You've carried this ego idea of your own self-importance, your need to be right, for so long that you've deluded yourself into believing that the ego self is who you are. Talk about being out of balance. You've opted for a belief in pure illusion. By allowing this illusion to be the dominant force, you've created through your ego-centered self a heavy imbalance in your life. The result is that you want to feel love. The real thing, the love that is the very essence of your being, the love that you are, but you feel emptiness instead of lovingness. Why is this so? Because the emptiness can only be filled with love by opening your heart connection to the spirit of love that originates you know not where, but can be felt within you. It's your empty space, no one else's. Therefore, only you can fill it. Your objective is to ask love within you to make its presence known, to have an awareness of being so full of love that this is what you have to give away. That's all you have to do, ask and receive. By doing just that, you'll attract more of what you're giving away. The key to balancing your desire to be at peace with your need to achieve, perform, and earn a living is in recognizing that there's no such thing as stress. There's only people thinking stressful thoughts. It's really as simple as that. When you change the way you process the world you're processing changes. Stress is an inside job. You can't fill a container with it because tension isn't a physical item or object. There isn't some thing that you can point to and say, there it is, that's stress. It simply doesn't exist in that form. Yet 112 million people in America take medication for stress-related symptoms, which include fatigue, heart palpitations, indigestion, diarrhea, constipation, nervousness, excessive eating, rashes, nail biting, loss of appetite, insomnia, anxiety, irritability, panic, moodiness, memory lapses, the inability to concentrate, ulcers, obsessive-compulsive behavior, feeling upset, and on goes an almost inexhaustible list. And they're all caused by something that doesn't exist in the physical world. Being out of balance on this stress measure results in being one of the millions of people requiring medication to manage the symptoms listed above. It means that you often feel exasperated because you never really enjoy the life you work so hard to achieve. You may frequently feel as if you're spending your life running on an endless treadmill. All of the pressure of working and striving may have many worldly rewards, yet at the same time, there's a feeling of going absolutely nowhere. If this sounds familiar, it's a signal to begin reconsidering ways of processing thoughts about your life and work, and start pursuing freedom from the symptoms of stress by becoming more balanced. Getting into balance isn't necessarily about changing your behavior. Certainly you can pursue stress-reducing activities such as meditation, exercise, walks along a beach, or whatever might work for you, but if you continue to align yourself with achieving more, defeating the other guy, winning at all costs, and going faster because you believe that's how to keep up, then you're guaranteed to attract the vibrational equivalent of this thinking into your life, even if you do yoga and stand on your head chanting mantras every day. Stress reduction is about realignment. You become what you think about all day long. You also become how you think all day long. To measure the weight of your thoughts, you need to think in terms of vibration and energy. Let's suppose that you have a high-frequency desire to be a person who has no symptoms of stress. Let's assign this thought a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, with the lowest energy thought of 1 representing a nervous breakdown and a 10 representing enlightened, peaceful mastery. Next, you need to note the thoughts you have that support your desire for a peaceful, stress-free life. Thoughts such as, I'm overwhelmed, I've never have enough time, I have so many people wanting so many things from me that I don't even have enough time to think, I have so much more on my plate than I can handle, and I feel pressured by my need to make money to pay my bills, aren't balanced and peaceful. These thoughts are resistant energy, which counters the desire for a peaceful, stress-free existence. In other words, they're non-aligned and out of balance. Your desire may be a 10, but your mental energy in this situation is in a much lower range, perhaps a 2 or 3. Simply changing your behavior isn't going to get you back into balance. You're still attracting symptoms of stress when you say no to people and their demands, but vibrate to a frequency that's thinking, I really should be doing what they ask of me, or maybe I can squeeze in their requests a little bit later on if I adjust my schedule. You may have pulled back from an overly full and frenzied schedule, yet you continue to radiate thoughts of fear and scarcity that will activate the law of attraction to bring you fear and scarcity. If stress thoughts are tipping the scale, that's what the law of attraction brings. Remember, you become what you think about. If you're thinking scarcity or anger or fear, guess what? That's what the law of attraction attracts. Even with a well-balanced schedule that allows for more free time, and even with plenty of stress-reducing activities on your pared-down personal calendar, if you fail to align your thoughts with the success you're capable of attracting, the weight of the dominant thoughts will tip the scale away from a balanced life. How you live your daily life will remain out of balance, and you'll have failed to assimilate the essence of Gandhi's advice that there's more to life than increasing its speed. What you most need to learn is how to create a match between what it is that you desire in your life and what thoughts or vibrational energy you're choosing to attract those desires. Realigning your point of attraction, the art of becoming. Here's one of my favorite quotes from my teacher in India, Nisargadatta Maharaj. Quote, "There is nothing to do, just be. Do nothing. Be. No climbing mountains and sitting in caves. I do not even say be yourself, since you do not know yourself. Just be." Unquote. This idea may contradict everything you've been taught and how you've lived so far, but let it sink in anyway. If your lifetime inventory of ideas and rules has contributed to your being one of those 112 million who use medication to handle non-existent stress, you can certainly afford to entertain this thought. As you begin practicing the principles to realign with a vibration that matches your desire for a tranquil, peaceful life, you'll become more conscious of your thoughts. These thoughts of yours literally determine who you are. And the fact that you're listening to these words suggests that you're interested in becoming more conscious of your thoughts. Being and becoming are used synonymously here. In order to restore a sense of balance between your desire for tranquility and your desire to meet the requirements of your life, you must practice becoming and being the vibration that you desire. Being peace. Peace isn't something that you ultimately receive when you slow down the pace of your life. Peace is what you're capable of being and bringing to every encounter and event in the waking moments of your life. Most of us are waging a non-stop internal mental skirmish with everyone we encounter. Being peaceful is an inner attitude that you can enjoy when you've learned to silence your incessant inner dialogue. Being peaceful isn't dependent on what your surroundings look like. It seldom has anything to do with what the people around you think, say, or do. A noiseless environment isn't a requirement. St. Francis's famous prayer states it better than I can. Make me an instrument of thy peace. In other words, St. Francis wasn't asking God to provide him with peace. He was asking for guidance to be more like the peace he trusted was his source. Being peace is different from looking for peace.
There's two concepts here that are very important. One is the question of willing something to happen. All right? So what they think of when they think of having faith is that, all right, on August the 13th, if there really is a God, or if this really works, then I will get the phone call that will give me the biggest break of my life on August the 13th, and that's the way it's going to be. Or maybe even in just some small way, like on September 15th, I will get rid of this wart that's on my nose, or something. So it's like willing things to happen in the universe. That will lead you to frustration and disbelief and an absence of faith, and the awakened life, or looking at life from the enlightened perspective that I'm talking about and discovering this inner universe, will always be like just outside of your grasp if you're testing God or testing the universe in some way. So that's like willing things to happen. Just through the power of my will, I can make it happen. The second principle here is what I call being willing. In this case, it's different than willing something to be. This is called being willing for it to be. And that is a whole new way of testing the universe. It isn't making a demand. It isn't, if I can get this bird to land over here on this branch, and that's going to be the signal that I'm looking for. It isn't anything like that, because the universe doesn't work that way. And it is like, I am now going to be willing to allow what it is that I want to happen. I'm going to be willing. I'm not going to demand anything. I'm not going to ask anything special for it to happen. I'm just going to be willing. Now, I'll give you a really bizarre example of this. I was meditating on Maui this past summer. On a couple of occasions, there would be peacocks which would walk through the grounds in this particular place where I was meditating. I can remember trying to get them to come to me. Like, oh yeah, let me see if I can make this peacock walk over to me. It just ignored me, like it was maybe 30 feet away. And then when I stopped that, stopped demanding anything, stopped trying to prove anything, and I just really, you must emit some kind of a different energy or a different feeling or whatever, because when I did that, almost every morning after doing that, the peacocks would come over and literally stand right next to me where I could touch them. And they usually will stay further. In fact, I had grass in my hand one time and came over and literally ate the grass right out of my hand. And it would happen morning after morning when I was willing. If you're attempting to will something and demand something and prove something, I find that that very demand is a judgment, and it's a doubt. And that doubt itself interferes with the natural and perfect way the universe is unfolding, and you in it. Whereas if you stop the demand, that is, stop the doubt, and just allow yourself to be, I'm saying to you, instead of willing it to happen in your mind, be willing to allow it to happen. Picture whatever it is that you want to picture for yourself, and don't make any demands on it. And understand, if you understand the new physics, the quantum physics, that in quantum physics, Fritjof Capra and Gary Zukav, both of them talk about this in their books, The Tao of Physics and The Dancing Woolly Masters and The Seed of the Soul, that when you observe an object in the universe, whatever it is, even a stone, that the actual observation of the object itself has an impact on it. Just the observation of it. Your presence in and around any object in the universe at the tiniest, most subatomic level that you can get at, they're discovering that just your presence of observing something has an effect on it. So if you are observing something with a demand, and you can come up from the quantum level through the subatomic, subatomic to subatomic to atomic to the physical world that you experience, understand that your demand or your observation of or your judgment of or your insistence upon is enough to keep it from happening and allowing it to unfold in its natural perfection. Whereas your willingness, that's the difference between faith and a demand. Faith is like, I go with it. I know. And then I start seeing miracles around me all the time. Whereas the doubting Thomas, or the person who's trying to test it all the time, will find that their very testing of this kind of phenomenon will in itself emit enough doubtful energy to keep it from working for you in your life.
You are both a physical body in a material world and a non-physical being who can gain access to a higher level. That higher level is within you and is reached through the stages of adult development. I present these stages with some degree of expertise because I've spent many years in each of them. They have been stepping stones to my awareness of my higher self. Each stage involved experiences that permitted me to move ahead in my thinking and my awareness. There are 4 stages of adult development. The first is called the athlete. The word athlete is intended as a description of the time in our adult lives when our primary identification is with our physical body and how it functions in our everyday world. This is the time when life seems impossible without a mirror and a steady stream of approval to make us feel secure. The stage of the athlete is the time in our adult development when we are almost completely identified with our performance, attractiveness, and achievements. Obviously, it is healthy to take good care of your body by treating it kindly and exercising and nourishing it in the best way your circumstances allow. Having pride in your physical appearance and enjoying compliments does not mean you are body fixated. However, if your daily activities revolve around a predetermined standard of performance and appearance, you are in the stage that I am calling here the athlete. The second stage is identified by the word the warrior. When we leave the athlete stage behind, we generally enter the stage of the warrior. This is the time when the ego dominates our lives and we feel compelled to conquer the world to demonstrate our superiority. My definition of ego is the idea that we have of ourselves as important and separate from everyone else. The ego-driven warrior objective is to subdue and defeat others in a race for the number 1 spot. During this stage, we are busy with goals and achievements and competition with others. This ego-dominated stage is full of anxiety and endless comparison of our successes. Trophies, awards, titles, and the accumulation of material objects record our achievements. The warrior is intensely concerned with the future and who might be in his way or interfere with his status. The third stage is identified by the term the statesperson. The statesperson stage of life is the time when we have tamed our ego and shifted our awareness. In this stage, we want to know what is important to the other person. We've begun to know that our primary purpose is to give rather than to get. The statesperson is still an achiever and quite often athletic. However, the inner drive is to serve others. Authentic freedom cannot be experienced until one learns to tame the ego and move out of self-absorption. When you can let go of your own thoughts about yourself and not think of you for a long period of time, that is when you become free. The statesperson stage of adulthood is about service and gratefulness for all that shows up in your life. At this level, you're very close to your highest self. The primary force in your life is no longer the desire to be the most powerful and attractive or to dominate and conquer. You have entered the realm of inner peace. It is always in the service of others, regardless of what you do or what your interests are, that you find the bliss you're seeking. There is one stage even higher than the statesperson, and this can be described by the word the spirit. When you enter this highest stage of life, regardless of your age or position, you recognize your truest essence, the highest self. When you know your highest self, you're on the way to becoming a co-creator of your entire world, learning to manage the circumstances of your life and participating with assurance in the act of creation. You become, literally, a manifester. The spirit stage of life is characterized by an awareness that this place called Earth is not your home. You know that you're not an athlete, a warrior, or even a statesperson, but that you are an infinite, limitless, immortal, universal, and eternal energy temporarily residing in a body. You know that nothing dies, and that everything is an energy that is constantly changing. This inner infinite energy is not just in you, it is in all things and all people who are alive now and have ever lived. You begin to know this intimately. When you reach this level, you're in the space I think of as being in this world, but not of this world. Most people think of the spiritual world as a future occurrence that they will know after death. Most of us have been taught that the highest self is something that you cannot know as long as you're trapped in a body. However, the spirit is now. It is in you in this moment, and the energy is not something that you will ultimately come to know, but is what you are here and now. The unseen energy that was once in Shakespeare or Picasso or Galileo or any human form is also available to all of us. That is because the spirit energy does not die, it simply changes form. It can't die because it has no boundaries, no beginnings, no ends, no physical characteristic that we call form. That energy is within you. Gaining the awareness that you have a higher self that is universal and eternal will lead you to gaining access to the world more freely and to participating in the act of creation or manifesting your heart's desire.
The fact is that everything in this physical universe doesn't meet the definition of what is real. Who you are is that soul that I spoke about a few moments ago. That soul that says, I want to expand. I want to be free. I want to go to a place where I understand that who I am is birthless, deathless, changeless, and live from that place. Because what this involves fundamentally is reprogramming yourself from the belief system that has been your ego. The part of us that has come to believe that who we are is what we have, and who we are is what we do, and who we are is what other people think of us, like our reputation, and who we are is separate from each other, and most egregiously, who we are is separate from God, from our source. And so we've been raised and taken out into the world and said, go out there and prove who you are by achieving, by accumulating, by getting other people to like you. I wrote a book and did a film not too long ago called The Shift. And thank you. And in there I spoke about and used these words. The direction we take in life is far more important than the place that our ego parks us in this present moment. That who we are is this divine, infinite being that keeps occupying new bodies endlessly until we leave this body and then move on. And there is no beginning, there is no end, there is only now, each and every one of us. So the soul, the part of you that is extraordinary, the part of you that came into this world and knows, I can be anything, I can do anything, I can accomplish anything that I place my attention on. Because if you want to accomplish something, you must first just expect it of yourself. And this means changing around the expectations that you've been conditioned to believe are your dharma or are your destiny. I am limited. I am not entitled to prosperity. I am unable to deal with my physical ailments. I need something else. I need to take pills in order to do it. I need to have somebody else do it for me. That within each and every one of us, there is this marvelous knowing that is really and truly God ourselves, each and every one of us. The soul does not like when you get fenced in, when it is told what to do, when it's told it has limitations, when it's told it can't become that. And so many of us go through our life with these enormous limitations that we've placed upon ourselves that have been handed to us from the time that we were little boys and little girls.
A sense of purpose is at the very top of the pyramid of self-actualization created by Abraham Maslow more than 50 years ago. Through his research, Dr. Maslow discovered that those who feel purposeful are living the highest qualities that humanity has to offer. During the many years I've been in the fields of human development, motivation, and spiritual awareness, this is the topic that more people inquire about than anything else. I'm repeatedly asked questions such as, how do I find my purpose? Does such a thing really exist? Why didn't I know my purpose in life? Well, being on purpose is what the most self-actualized people accomplish on their life journeys. But many individuals feel little sense of purpose and may even doubt that they have a purpose in life in the first place. Feeling purposeful. In response to the question, what should I do with my life? I suggest that there's only one thing you can do with it, since you came into this life with nothing and you'll leave with nothing. You can give it away. You'll feel most on purpose when you're giving your life away by serving others. When you're giving to others, to your planet, and to your source, you're being purposeful. Whatever it is that you choose to do, if you're motivated to be of service to others while being authentically detached from the outcome, you'll feel on purpose, regardless of how much abundance may flow back to you. Allow yourself to be in the feeling place within you that's unconcerned with such things as vocational choice or doing the things you are destined to do. When you're in the service of others or extending kindness beyond your own boundaries, you'll feel connected to your source. You'll feel happy and content knowing that you're doing the right thing. Outside of my chosen occupation, I feel purposeful in a myriad of ways virtually every single day. When I extend assistance to someone in need, when I take a moment to cheer up a disgruntled employee in a restaurant or a store, or when I make a child laugh who sits otherwise ignored in a stroller, or even when I pick up a piece of litter and place it in a trash can, I feel that I'm giving myself away, and as such, I feel purposeful. Essentially what I'm saying here is this. Stay on purpose by expressing the 7 phases of intention, and the details will find you. You'll never, ever again have to ask what your purpose is or how to find it. Your purpose will find you. What thoughts do you have that inhibit you from feeling as if you're on purpose in your life? For instance, if you think that you're separate from your purpose and that you're drifting without direction throughout your life, then that's precisely what you'll attract. Suppose instead that you know this is a purposeful universe where your thoughts and your emotions and your actions are all a part of your free will and are also connected to the power of intention. Suppose that your thoughts of being purposeless and aimless are really a part of your purpose. Just as the thought of losing someone you love makes you love them even more, or an illness makes you treasure your health, supposing that it takes the thought of your unimportance to make you realize your value. When you're awake enough to question your purpose and ask how to connect to it, you're being prodded by the power of intention. The very act of questioning why you're here is an indication that your thoughts are nudging you to reconnect to the field of intention. What's the source of your thoughts about your purpose? Why do you want to feel purposeful? Why is a sense of purpose considered the highest attribute of a fully functioning person? The source of thought is an infinite reservoir of energy and intelligence. In a sense, thoughts about your purpose are really your purpose trying to connect to you. This infinite reservoir of loving, kind, creative, abundant energy grew out of the originating intelligence and is stimulating you to express this universal mind in your own unique way. Your silent inner knowing. Esteemed psychologist and philosopher William James once wrote, quote, "In the dim background of our mind, we know meanwhile what we ought to be doing, but somehow we cannot start. Every moment we expect the spell to break, but it does continue pulse after pulse, and we float with it," unquote. In my experience as a therapist and as a speaker talking with thousands of people about their lives, I've come to the same conclusion. Somewhere, buried deep within each of us, is a call to purpose. It's not always rational, and it's not always clearly delineated, and sometimes even seemingly absurd, but the knowing is there. There's a silent something within that intends you to express yourself. That something is your soul. It's telling you to listen and connect through love, kindness, and receptivity to this power of intention. That silent inner knowing will never leave you alone. You may try to ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist, but in honest, alone moments of contemplative communion with yourself, you sense the emptiness waiting for you to fill it with your music. It wants you to take the risks that are involved and to ignore your ego and the egos of others who tell you that an easier, safer, or more secure path is best for you. When you're inspired by a great purpose, everything will begin to work for you. Inspiration comes from moving back in spirit and connecting to the 7 faces of intention. When you feel inspired, what appeared to be risky becomes a path you feel compelled to follow. The risks are gone because you're following your bliss, which is the truth within you. This is really love working in harmony with your intention. Essentially, if you don't feel love, you don't feel the truth, and your truth is all wrapped up in your connection to spirit. This is why inspiration is such an important part of the fulfillment of your intention to live a life on purpose. You may think it's too risky to give up a salary, a pension, job security, or familiar surroundings because of a dim nightlight in your mind that draws you to see why it's turned on. I suggest that there are no risks at all if you pay attention to that light, which is your knowing. Combine your strong knowing with the faith that Spirit will provide, and you acknowledge the power of intention at work. You are a divine, infinite creation, making the choice to be on purpose and to be connected to the power of intention. It all revolves around your being harmoniously connected to your source. Again, it all revolves around your being harmoniously connected to your source. Faith eliminates the risk when you choose to trust that inner knowing about your purpose and become a channel for the power of intention. You live in a noisy world, constantly bombarded with loud music, sirens, construction equipment, jet airplanes, rumbling trucks, leaf blowers, lawnmowers, and tree cutters. These human-made unnatural sounds invade your senses and keep silence at bay. In fact, you've been raised in a culture that not only eschews silence but is terrified of it. The car radio must always be on, and any pause in conversation is a moment of embarrassment that most people quickly fill with chatter. For many, being alone is a nightmare, and being alone in silence is pure torture. The famous scientist Blaise Pascal once observed, "All man's miseries derive from not being able to sit quietly in a room, alone." The value of silence. There's a momentary silence in the space between your thoughts that you can become aware of with practice. In this silent space, you'll find the peace that you crave in your daily life. You'll never know that peace if you have no spaces between your thoughts. The average person is said to have 60,000 separate thoughts every day. With so many thoughts, there are almost no gaps. If you could reduce that number by half, you would open up an entire world of possibilities for yourself. For it is when you merge into the silence and become one with it that you reconnect to your source and know the peacefulness that some call God. "Be still and know that I am God," says it so beautifully in the Psalms of the Old Testament. The key words are still and know. Be still actually means silence. Mother Teresa described silence and its relationship to God by saying, God is the friend of silence. See how nature, trees, grass grow in silence. See the stars, the moon, and the sun, how they move in silence. We need silence to be able to touch souls. This includes your soul. It's really the space between the notes that makes the music you enjoy so much. Without the spaces, all you would have is one continuous, noisy note. Everything that's created comes out of silence. Your thoughts emerge from the nothingness of silence. Your words come out of this void. Your very essence emerged from emptiness. Those who will supersede us are waiting in the vast void. All creativity requires some stillness. Your sense of inner peace depends on spending some of your life energy in silence to recharge your battery and remove tension and anxiety and reacquaint you with the joy of knowing God and feel closer to all of humanity. Silence reduces fatigue and allows you to experience your own creative juice. The second word in the Old Testament observation is know. Know, K-N-O-W, refers to making your personal and conscious contact with God. To know God is to banish doubt and become independent of others' definitions and descriptions of God. Instead, you have your own personal knowing. And as Melville reminded us so poignantly, God's one and only voice is silence. Accessing more silence in your life. I urge you to demand more and more time for silence in your life. One of the most effective ways to bring this about is to make meditation a daily practice. And remember, there's no such thing as a bad meditation. Give yourself time to sit quietly alone. At first, your thoughts will take off trying to convince you that this is a waste of time, that you should be out there being productive, and that you've got so many other things to do. Hundreds of other unrelated thoughts will pop up in and out of your mind. But you can weather this thunderstorm of mental protestations by sitting quietly and becoming the observer to all of this inner chatter. Eventually, you'll be able to move to the gaps between your thoughts and notice how peaceful you felt in that silent gap when you emerge from it. Try it right now. Use the Lord's Prayer. Concentrate on the word our and then Father. Try to go into the gap between the two words, our and Father. Then do it again with who and art and in and heaven. Just slip momentarily into the gap and notice how peaceful and exquisite you feel in that gap. I teach a meditation which I describe in detail and guide you through with my voice in a CD cassette called Meditations for Manifesting. This meditation uses the sound of ah as a mantra to keep your thoughts from wandering during the morning meditation. This mantra sound is in virtually all names of the divine. Listen for it, for example, in God, Yahweh, Allah, Krishna, Jehovah, Ra, Ptah. By repeating this mantra sound, you make conscious contact with God. The evening meditation uses the sound of Om, the sound of gratitude for all that has manifested in your life. Repeating the sound of Ah in the morning and Om in the evening for approximately 20 minutes creates an opportunity for you to experience inner peace and success in a way you may never have known before. There are many opportunities to access silence. I try to meditate each time I stop at a red light. With the car stopped and my body inactive, frequently the only thing still moving are the thoughts in my mind. I use those 2 minutes or so at the stoplight to bring my mind into harmony with my inert car and body. I get a wonderful bonus of silence. I probably stop at a red light 20 or 30 times in a day, creating 40 minutes to an hour of silence. And there's always someone behind me to let me know when my time is up by breaking the silence with a honking horn. Meditation not only affects you, it impacts everyone around you. When you're at peace, you radiate a different kind of energy than when you're stressed or depressed. The more peaceful you become, the easier you can deflect the negative energies of those you encounter. This is like having an invisible shield around you that nothing can penetrate unless it's at a higher spiritual energy than your shield. A hostile current is greeted with a smile and an inner knowing that this is not your stuff. A person who attempts to bring you into their misery cannot succeed without your agreement. Your meditation practice keeps you immune. Not only can you deflect the negativity of those around you, but your sense of peace will bring others into harmony with you.
Don't ever believe that people can't change. Don't ever give up on human beings Some people never do change. There's no question about that. But the potential for changing and dropping really bad habits is within all of us, and it can happen in an instant. For whatever reason, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. If he has a readiness to rid himself of this alcoholic rage behavior of his, which she said, other than that, he was a wonderful husband. He was terrific. You know, it was only if he got drunk, he would become so abusive that it would be impossible to be around him. She was afraid and so on. And I talked to her a bit about it, and I had her listen to the transformation tapes. And I just got a letter from her yesterday. And she said, I listened to what you said, and he contacted us to see his little boy. And she said, I had made up my mind I was never going to see him, but I said, why don't you come over? She said he has absolutely no desire to have alcohol anymore. Now, this has only been about 3 months now. But she said, we're happy, we're back together again, we're going places as a family, things have never been better. And she said, and he has absolutely no desire to drink and hasn't had anything. And she said, I just can't believe the wonderful change that has taken place. And she said, and the only reason I allowed it is because you had said that to me that afternoon at the pool. I went to get in my car a few months ago, and somehow someone had gotten this card, and it was on the my front seat. And I couldn't believe that it was there. And it said, I have been all things unholy. If God can work through me, he can work through anyone. And it was signed St. Francis of Assisi. This is a quote from St. Francis of Assisi. I mean, here's one of the people that we revere as a saint saying, I have been all things unholy. I mean, if a person who has been all things unholy can become a saint, anyone who has been an externally directed person can become an internally directed person. I have a quote. A lady sent this to me in the mail. She said, I think this will really be important and impactful for you. She said, this is a rough draft of Leo Tolstoy's will. It was composed on March the 27th in 1885. And here's what he said in his rough draft of his will, Leo Tolstoy, the great novelist, who became very spiritual toward the end of his life. He said, furthermore, and in particular, I ask all people near and far not to praise me. I know they will do so because they have done so in my lifetime in the most unseemly ways. But if they want to study my writings, let them look carefully at those passages in them in which I know the power of God spoke through me, and make use of them for their own lives. There have been times when I felt I was becoming the bearer of God's will. I have often been so impure, so full of personal passions, that the light of this truth has been obscured by my own darkness. But nevertheless, this truth has sometimes passed through me, and these have been the happiest moments of my life. God grant that these truths should not have been defiled in passing through me, and that people might feed on them, despite the superficial and impure form which I have given them. I mean, this is from a man who wrote such great, great novels, and then toward the end of his life began to really believe that his work was reflecting of God's will, and he looked back on his earlier life and he's talking about, can people change? I see the same thing in myself. I mean, people listen to me, people revere the work that I have done. They too often treat me as some kind of guru, which I am not. I mean, I feel like St. Francis. I mean, I have been all things unholy. I've lived a life of experimentation and checking things out, and am not proud of every single detail of my life. And yet I feel in the stage that I'm in my life now, that very often, despite all of that, and people come to hear me in churches, and I speak in front of congregations of thousands of people all over the world. And I think, what am I doing in church? You know, these walls are going to crumble. And yet I know that in many ways I'm speaking God's word, God's will. There's nobody out there that can catalog how people change. It isn't a formula. It isn't something that we can put down in paper. People change in moments. People change in instants. And some people change over a gradual period of a lifetime and so on. But a person who is externally directed and doesn't like it and realizes the potential victimization that's in that that is, you're a victim of whatever anybody else or anything outside of you is controlling and how it is controlling you, then changing that is just like changing your mind. You just have new thoughts. You just take out the old thoughts and you put in the new. But the first thing you have to do is know that you'll only see it when you believe it. You start with the belief that I do not have to be directed by anything outside of myself, and that God is within me, and the infinite and divine power that makes me human and gives me sustenance as a human being is always there. So I have inner power, I have inner direction, and everything that every great human being has ever done, I can do as well. All things that any human being can do, I can do as well.